Hello again and welcome back to Geotech Masters. In our journey so far, we have learned how to name rocks and describe their color and grain size. But as engineers, we need to know more than just what the rock looks like. We need to know how strong it is. In this fourth episode, we are going to get physical with the rock. We'll learn how to estimate the unconfined compressive strength or UCS using nothing but our hands, a pocket knife, and the geological hammer. We'll also look at chemical testing. We will learn how to use dilute acid to determine the carbonate content of a rock. These are simple tests, but they provide critical data for our engineering modules. By the end of this video, you will be able to pick up a rock and assign it a strength grade with confidence. Let's get started.
Before we dive into the methods, we want you to think about a few questions. Can a human thumbnail really measure megapascals of strength? It sounds strange, but the standard says yes. We will see exactly how that works. Also, when you are in the field, how do you decide if a rock is weak or strong? Is it just a feeling, or is there a specific rule involving how many hammer blows it takes to break the sample? Finally, why do geologists or geotechnical engineers carry little bottles of acid? What does the fizzing reaction actually tell an engineer about the rock's behavior or its cementation? We are going to answer all these questions in this session. Let's start with unconfined compressive strength, or UCS. This is the most common measure of strength used in rock mechanics design. In a laboratory, we crush a rock cylinder to find this number, but in the field, we cannot carry a crushing machine. Section 5.3 of the standard